All righty. Kristen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Shirley?
Good. I'm so happy. Sometimes one of the greatest things about technology is friends can catch up across time and space because I've missed being
Right.
with you. But now we're in
Right.
the same place, almost like, and we're chatting. And I'm very happy you can join me today because one of the things I really admire about you is your ability to continuously reinvent yourself and do it well. And you're not afraid. You're not afraid of others. You're not afraid of yourself. And I really love that. Now, for those people who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what makes you to be the woman of many faces?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, it's a little bit of a long story, so I'll try to do
Okay.
the Reader's Digest condensed version. I went to college and majored in music. My family didn't want me to. Um, I don't know what they wanted me to do. I think they just wanted me to get married and go, have a quiet life. But of course, I decided to be a singer, a classical singer, and then went to grad school in Boston and did all of that stuff. And then I decided to move to New York to seek fame and fortune. And of course, back in the 80s, things were not, we had no internet. So it wasn't as easy to hear about auditions and things like that. It was all sort of word of mouth and get to know somebody who knew about this. And so it was a very different kind of a business at that point in time. But I, right out the bat, after finishing grad school, when everybody had to get some sort of a job to, pay the bills, because obviously coming out of music school, how are you going to earn a full-time job unless you're one of these orchestra players who,
Right.
a violinist or a cellist or a trumpet player or something.
Or a timpanist.
Right. And even then the competition was really hard for them too.
Right.
So while other people were being waitresses and receptionists and all that, I decided I wanted to use, excuse me, my knowledge and my skills. So I got a job teaching after school voice lessons at a high school in Newton, Mass. And I realized it was part-time in the afternoons, I think 3 or 4 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go show up at the lessons, driving out, I'd be like, oh, I'm tired. I don't feel like doing this. But I noticed that every time at the end of the afternoon when I was driving back home, I'd be smiling and feel good.
Why is that?
And so I think it's important for all of us to notice ourselves. What is your body telling you? What is your brain telling you? Don't just be focused on, oh, but I want to be a singer. Oh, I want to, there were a few other options I could have done to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
But I listened to my brain and my body. I could just feel that my body had more energy and I felt at peace with myself. And I'd be smiling. I'd catch myself smiling as I was driving home. And on a day when I specifically thought, oh, I'm so tired. I don't want to go do this. I wish I could just go read a book. So that sort of set me up for the future, the next, I don't know, 25 years or so.
Yeah.
I pursued the singing as much as possible, but then I always kept a voice studio going, taught a lot of part-time jobs over the years. When I moved to New York, I was at the Brooklyn Conservatory of Music, and they had a Queens division.
And I know you have taught at very top school like AMDA, etc., as well. And now I know at one point you made a decision after many years of performing and teaching, and you're being very humble about your performing experience. You've sung as a feature soloist in orchestra with really famous conductors. You've toured internationally, but as we both know, unfortunately, in classical music, we just can't make a living even when we have very glamorous looking jobs. But I know at one point you decided you needed to do something a little different, and you decided to go back to school after many years of actually teaching as a college professor.
Right.
Mhm.
I think the big motivator there was I went through a divorce and I had a daughter that was 5 years old.
Mhm.
And suddenly I realized that I could not by myself support a daughter
Mhm.
on this freelance, a little here and a little there.
Mhm.
So I thought, okay, I will work towards being a college professor. I was already an adjunct and teaching at a
Right.
couple of different schools. So um, I went back to get my doctorate.
Mhm.
Worked out. Columbia was right up the street. I was at 110th and Broadway, and it was at
Oh yeah, right there.
115th and Broadway, right?
Right.
So it was very convenient. And I sort of had to do one class at a time because I had 4 part-time jobs and a daughter.
Right.
But I did it. It took 6 years.
Hey.
And I kept adding more schools to, taught at least Strasberg Institute. I taught all the NYU freshmen
Mhm.
for theater majors. And then I taught for 1 year at Marymount Manhattan.
Mhm.
Another year I taught out in New Jersey at, the name of the school um,
Right. And
escaping me right now, but Patterson University.
mhm. Mhm.
And then I got my doctorate.
Yes.
And then I got this full-time teaching job that I thought was going to be the answer.
You have arrived, right?
Right, right. And my plan was that I now am Dr. Samuelson. I will be an academic the rest of my life. I won't have to worry about health insurance. I won't have to worry about a regular income, um, a little stability.
And I want to
And
talk about that for a moment because, we all have a baggage that we carry from the way we were raised. And you mentioned earlier that your parents didn't really want you to be a musician. And I believe your father was a physician. So being a Dr. Samuelson had a significant
oh no, my dad was an accountant. He was a business.
accountant. Ah,
I
yes.
have a big brother who's a neurosurgeon.
Right, right. So I think something about being a doctor, having this designation, had a carried the importance to you emotionally as well. And then, but something in you after reaching that goal also undid you undid that baggage to kind of really pivoted your life altogether. How
Well,
did you do that?
it really did. And
Mhm.
um, I moved to Florida. That's where I met you,
Yes,
Shirley.
yes.
And I was in Jacksonville at Jacksonville University, and um, director of opera and musical theater. I mean, I was teaching all the academic classes for the singers. I was directing a show once a year, and whatever. I was working really hard,
Yes.
um, but I did not get tenure.
Mm.
And I think that's what really upset the apple cart in my brain, because in my brain I thought, okay, I got the doctorate,
Mhm.
full-time job. Now I'll just do this till I retire,
Right.
whenever that might be.
Mhm.
But it didn't work out that way.
Mm.
And of course, at the time, I was really depressed about it and not happy. And I felt I had failed. Um, but I think, who is it? Thomas Edison, the person who hasn't failed will never succeed.
Right, right.
One of those famous guys said something to that effect. But my daughter was a senior in high school when this news came through, and she
Mm.
said, "Mom, I think you could be on TV." And I looked at her I mean, all my degrees are in music. I'd
Right.
always been a music teacher teaching singing, Broadway or musical theater. I mean, musical theater or classical, a little bit of piano, maybe I taught.
And you weren't 22.
And what?
And you were not 22 years old. Packing
No,
up to
I
become
was
actress,
I
right?
was already over 50.
And you
So,
were a single mother on top of
and
that
I was a single mother.
with a mortgage.
Uh, but the thing is, I mean, I do think this is where I really believe you have to listen to the universe
Mm.
as you live your life.
Mhm.
Because if I had been, I applied for other teaching jobs, and I could have taken a job either in Missouri or Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Mhm.
And I, I,
Couldn't see
I,
yourself there.
I couldn't bring myself to do it. I had grown up in Oklahoma. I knew the Midwest. I was a New Yorker at that point. I had been living in
Right.
New York for 20 years,
Right.
and then Florida at least was close to New York relatively. And I just said no.
I think
And
that's incredible.
it
Yeah.
was sort of hard because then I just had no job. Here I am, Dr. Samuelson with no job.
Mhm.
And the politics were such that I wasn't very comfortable being in Jacksonville, Florida, but I had a house that I owned there. So
Mhm.
there I was. And but I started taking the acting classes down in Orlando.
Right. I remember.
And I pretty soon, what I realized, I wasn't necessarily good at it because I wanted to do the on camera thing. I figured, okay, let's try doing TV. Who
Mhm.
knows? And a couple of other people were enthusiastic about, yeah, you can be do modeling for seniors. You're a good role model for older women. And like, okay. But I realized after, I don't know, a few months of doing it, while it wasn't easy for me, it was a whole new challenge. And it was a creative thing. It was along the lines. It was acting. It was similar to what I'd been doing, but it was actually quite different.
Right.
So I saw that as a creative challenge.
Mhm.
And I thought rather than just stick with what I've been doing for the last 25 years, I saw Betty White out there in every movie and TV show I turned around. And I thought, wow, I would so much rather be doing something as I get older, something creative, something that uses my energy,
Mhm.
than sitting here just being an old retired college professor, you know. And I determined I did not want to go to the Midwest, that path was not worth it to me.
Mhm.
Again, I just listened to my feelings
Yes.
instead of doing the logic.
Right.
And
And
that
I agree with you because one of my favorite books is called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And it's talking about we're not the voices we hear. We are the one who is listening. We are the silent one who is listening to all those chatters in our mind. And then how do we react? And the way we react is also very revealing of where our triggers are. And we need to work past it because, this is not a smooth path that you just described. And there was a lot of, it, there was a lot of pain. You followed your intuition. But
yeah.
Kristin, you've never been somebody who doesn't have a strategy. I almost said the word plan, but I don't think that's how it worked. Like you just mentioned, you listen to the intuition, you listen to that voice, right? And but then you once you distilled it and figured out who you were amongst all the chatters, you always looked for a strategy. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I um I know exactly what you're saying, where some people would sit and mope or sort of
Hope for the
dwell
best,
on
right?
the negativity or the failure or whatever's not going right.
Mhm.
I would definitely always have a period of that. Like I would call it a mourning period of
Yes.
like, oh
We need
God,
to
how did I
have
get
that.
back?
We
You
gotta
know,
stay healthy that
it's
way.
not
Yeah.
like I'm without the ability to look at myself and go, what a mess you just made out of your life. But I can't tell you exactly where that spirit comes from that always makes me, I'll be depressed and then my eyes will open. I
Mhm.
think it's sort of like an animal coming, what I imagine like a bear coming out of the slumber that it goes to in the winter, hibernation.
Right,
I
right,
feel
right.
like an animal sort of opens one eye and goes, ooh, there's something out there. And then maybe I'll open the other one and go, wow, that's there too. Um, and and then before I know it, my brain has gotten off on something new that's interesting. I think the biggest thing that I'm aware of is that I love to learn new things.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, you
I
do.
love learning. I mean, I went back and got a doctorate when I was 40, so and it was really hard, but
Yes.
I learned so much and it made me a different person.
I love that because I can tell you there are a lot of musicians I have known who have been teaching and performing for years. If they were to go back to school to get a degree just so they can teach, very few of them would say, I learned so much. They say, I didn't really learn anything, but I got a piece of paper. I think it's only the attitude.
Well, and I do feel fortunate. I went to Columbia University Teachers College,
Right.
and the program there, they sort of let me write. There were very few definite
Interdisciplinary.
requirements.
Right.
So, and as a matter of fact, by the time I graduated, I'd taken twice as many courses as I needed to. That leave it to me.
Right.
And it, I just there was a lot of emphasis on brain function,
Mhm.
and then I took jazz piano. I took because I was always playing, accompanying
Right.
all the students, and I did take a piano accompanying class, and then that teacher gave me a teaching assistantship teaching piano.
Isn't that great?
It's not my favorite thing. It really is not. And then the next year they switched me over to teaching singing, which is fine.
Right.
But yeah, I got a confession there. The only time I almost fell asleep once teaching a piano lesson.
Oh my
In the
goodness.
middle of the lesson. It was so boring. And I
Sorry to feel that way.
I could never in a million years do that when I was teaching singing. But piano, it's not my thing. Um, but yeah. So what was the point? The question was about going
Learning
back and
and
learning, and
having a
yeah, I
strategy.
had to. I and what you also do is you learn about yourself
Right.
because it was such hard work to do the dissertation. When you
Mhm,
have a class, you've got deadlines, right? You're going to have a test now, that paper's due then, end of the
mhm,
semester grades come out, right?
mhm.
Dissertation, there's no definite time limit on. I think you've got 10 years to write it. But I needed to get it done because the main goal was to be able to get my daughter away from her abusive father.
Mm.
And ultimately, the thing that motivated me to actually just make a huge push, and I finished up the dissertation within 2.5 months.
Wow.
I had a session with a psychic, and I don't always see psychics, but at this point in my life, I was because I felt a little over my head
You
with
need a
dealing
little
with.
extra support.
I needed, yeah, someone to give me some encouragement or some
Right.
direction, right? And she gave me a big session telling me how abused my daughter was being, how
Mm.
badly my daughter was being treated at her father's place when she went to visit him. And it just motivated me so much. I just got my nose to the grindstone and got that dissertation done, defended in May, and graduated.
Wow.
And that was in the beginning of March. So it was really just a little over 2 months. I just wrapped it all. I just worked. But so, but what I learned, I learned that about myself. I need a really strong motivation
Mhm.
to accomplish something, but also the fear, that just went away. Any fear of
Interesting.
like, maybe I can't do this, or maybe,
So this is
I'm not
interesting
supposed to do this.
because fear is often the biggest stumbling block that we have, and sometimes we for instance, when this is just horrific to hear about your daughter being abused and having this history of abuse is a very difficult, just a very difficult path to navigate through and come out of. But you would think something like that would make a person to be more afraid, and I think that's what makes you very unique, because instead of becoming more afraid, it made you very ferocious and got rid of your fears.
Yeah. Well, with the ex-husband, because I got through, the divorce was the hardest. I divorced him, and he was abusive with me, but not physically. It was all verbal abuse and mental, psychological stuff.
Mhm.
But with her, there was physical abuse as well as the psychological stuff. So,
Oh my goodness.
um, But that divorce took about 2 years to get accomplished. And once I got that done, wow, that, again, there's an initial really down, depressed feeling, but then
Right. The mourning, the
all
grieving.
of a sudden you realize you have accomplished that.
Wow.
And he did not have control over my life. I have control over my life, and I can do this stuff. I can work through if I focus. And I think that's so important for all of us. Go into the fear.
Go into the fear.
Face it. Face it. You're afraid of it. They say, with the amygdala, the lower part of the brain, that's the animal part of our instinct. That is 90% fear, because that's how, as animals, we protected ourselves.
Protectives. Yeah.
In the wilderness, right?
Right.
We're no longer out in the wilderness. So we need to overcome that and go to the rational part of the brain in the front.
How fascinating. Wow. That is a very important
right. And just realize the fear is always going to be there, but you can go past it into the good stuff.
I love that. Now, I want to fast forward a bit, because now you have performed as a young performer, started teaching, and then gone through your divorce, got away from an abusive environment, got your PhD in your 40s, got a job that was going to change your life, and it didn't work out, pivoted into acting. Now, fast forward, I know as of today, you have won 8 Best Actress awards from different film festivals, and you have produced, written, and acted in an award-winning film, Extradition. I would love for you to share with us about how that all came together. And I know you're not stopping here. What next?
Okay. All right. So I had moved back to New York in 2015 to recreate myself, even though I swore when I left before I was never coming back. But now I'm an actress. I'm not an opera singer. And I was intrigued. And I also felt I wanted more training. I wanted to get better at it. With my singing and my music, I studied all the best places in Boston and Europe and New York. And so I came back to New York so I could pursue this and get better at it. And I never intended to actually write a screenplay by any means. But what actors do is you have a reel that has you take little excerpts of things you've done film for being on camera, and you put the best of them together on about a 2-minute reel, and that goes to casting directors and anybody who wants to see what kind of work you do. So being older and who I am, I had been told an ideal type would be like a politician. But the catch-22 is that I had no footage along those lines.
Yes.
And so what actors are doing today is often they're just sort of creating their own little film that is their ideal type, and then shooting it themselves.
Right.
So I found, of course, it costs some money. And I had met Anna Just, who's this Ukrainian young actress, beautiful. She'd been a model and toured around the world and everything. But she wanted some footage of herself, a little more businessy, lawyer-like. And then, of course, you have to get back to me. I'm very socially aware. And after the Trump election, I was really, here we go, angry. Again, when I was young, I would have been sad and depressed. But as I've gotten older, I've gotten just more angry, which is what
they say. Into your fear. Yes.
They say depression is. It's just suppressed anger, right?
Yes.
So I'm definitely gotten it out there. Anyway, so so when we were talking about this, I said, well, how about I was seeing Hillary Clinton as sort of my idol, something along those lines. But Trump, there had been this whole big thing about the Trump Tower thing where there was a Russian lawyer coming, and then they kept claiming it was just about Russian orphans and stuff. And I said, okay, why don't we do something along those lines? And you can be the Russian lawyer. And then a couple days later, she got back to me and said, I am not Russian. Nobody thinks I sound Russian. I am Ukrainian. I want to be Ukrainian.
Okay.
Okay, fine. And anyway, it was a long evolution. We had somebody else who was going to write, but he wrote 2 different drafts, and neither one of them really did what we were
It didn't quite work out.
wanting to accomplish. I mean, we were both supposed to get leading roles out of this, and the second version gave me 3 lines and her most of it. Anyway, so she and I just got together and we talked through what we thought would be a line of action, and I said, well, I'll try to write it.
Right. And you're the writer.
And I sat down and I wrote it. I was amazed. I mean, a dissertation is one thing, a screenplay is quite different.
Right.
I was very pleased. It just flowed.
But you're very analytical. You're one of those very interesting person where you're very intuitive. You follow your intuition, but you're also very analytical.
It's that intuitive thing. I do try to just go with that's definitely improved with age. I've learned to really go with my gut. I try really hard to listen to that.
Yeah, but what I was going with is you're the type of person when you study something, like when you study a script, when you study acting, I don't believe you will be the kind of person who just goes, let's go with the flow. You tend to be the kind of person who analyzes what you're looking at. And I think in the process, you have learned a lot about everything to do with acting, to do with filmmaking, including how the scripts work. And I think that's what eventually built up to your ability to write your first screenplay. And actually won a bunch of awards for this in so many different fields.
I got a couple for best writing and a few, I forget, 3 for best pilot.
Yeah.
The hope was to make it into like a TV series.
Right.
I've gotten sort of bogged down with that. The politics over the last few months have just anyway, I may get back to it after the election.
Yeah, and now tell me
clearly where this will go.
Right. And now I know you had a couple of really interesting interviews with the Formidable Women, the magazine, and also the Hollywood Times. I think for a lot of people, especially for Hollywood Times, it just sounds very glamorous. I used to live in Los Angeles. When you live in LA, it's like whatever. But but for everybody else outside of LA, Hollywood is like the epitome.
Yeah, right.
Right. So tell us about that interview.
I found it really interesting. Jules Lavallee is the interviewer, and she just was picking up on the success that Extradition has had, and all the awards I've won as a best actress, and also for writing. And I actually booked. The first time I've had this happen, I have a feeling it's as a result of doing my film Extradition. I had some people in Arizona are shooting a feature film.
Wow.
And there's a White House Situation Room in it, and they just called me out of the blue and offered me the role.
Congratulations.
And I'm shooting that in December. So these kinds of interviews, you never know who's going to read it.
You just don't. And I'm going to link that interview to the link here in the description because I really enjoy reading it myself. And because it's interesting because spending years in LA, growing up in LA, you're used to kind of running into a lot of celebrities and tons of people in acting, and but there's always something very interesting because you're my friend. You've been my friend, a good friend for many years. But when I read about the interview, it was from a perspective of a different person asking you questions. And it helped me to also get to know you a little differently because it's in a different context. And I just love that. And now, so we know you have a film coming up in Arizona. And so is this acting what you want to do for a little while longer? Are you thinking about pivoting into different aspects of filmmaking? What next?
Well, I want to act. I'm a performer at heart, and I think that a part of me that never felt like I got enough opportunity as a classical slash opera singer.
Mhm.
The part of me that never got enough of performing. I love an audience. But film is totally different. But
Different.
it just feels like something on camera. They want you to really be your age. So why can't I be, as I'm growing older, I'll be the 75-year-old lady or the 80-year-old lady or the, you know, it's really good for my brain. You know, my mother had Alzheimer's,
Mm.
and I'm told I don't have the gene for it, but still, all this memorizing, I do auditions probably 4 or 5 times a week.
Wow.
I submit something, they're all self tapes these days, but
Mhm.
all the memorizing, do you know how good that is to keep your brain
I
going?
know it is, right? I
I
start,
figure,
the whole exercise for myself when I'm teaching the piano students is I start to memorize their piece when I ask them to memorize it. So during the lesson, I'm memorizing their pieces because it keeps the mind working. And
absolutely.
yes, and I mean, to me, you're just one of the most fascinating friends I have because it
Aw.
every time I talk to you, you're living a different life. And but it, but it's never frivolous, meaning it's always growing. They always come together as a direction somehow, and the river flows, so to speak, right?
Uh-huh.
The river flows, and I feel today it's because as friends we have a lot of conversations over the years, but now today everything comes together. I can really hear the strength in pivoting, strength of really go to where you can receive the best of everything. From your undergraduate and your graduate degrees in music to when you decided to go back to school, you went to the best music schools for you were training to be a performer. And when you wanted to have a position as an educator, you went to one of the world's best universities. And then as an actress, you moved back to New York, and that's not easy. And so you can receive the
It
best.
has not been.
No, but you can receive the best training and the most opportunities. Then what happened was it required a lot of flexibility, a lot of going into the fear, and let that going into the fear to dispel the fear, the other fears, the chatters we hear, and to distill who you are. And then I just think it's amazing how, and you don't quit. That's another thing about you is you don't quit. You are flexible, but you don't quit.
Right,
I
right.
think those are just really important lessons for people, for myself, I'm sure for you, even living in it, and for a lot of people out there. And not be afraid to get out of an abusive situation. Because I think,
Oh, yeah, that's a
yeah,
really big one for women. It's hard to get out of that because, your ego is so battered and low, and your self esteem is so low. I had a
right,
great therapist that really helped me work through all that.
right. And,
And boy,
yeah.
does it make you a better person when you realize that you've been able to pull yourself out of that rut.
And then it also makes you to be a very strong person who will not take abuse from other people further down the road, because the professions you have chosen in the performing arts, it is we deal with a lot of egos and we deal with a lot of politics, right? so
Right.
so having that tenacity and ability to continue to stay on your feet, to keep your footing, is so important. And I think that's something that's very difficult for young performers, students coming out, going into school, coming out of school in their 20s, trying to figure out who they are as performers. And the sensitivity makes them good performers, but the fragility makes them stop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that idea of going into the fear again is, but it's like a reed. You want to stay strong but flexible, because you cannot
Yeah.
afford to lose that sensitivity, that fragility as a performer is what makes a person fascinating, either on stage or in front of camera. And so I just love the story you share with us today. This is so fascinating. And I'm so glad we got the chance to catch up. And I'm going to post a link to the to your interview, because I think people should know about
Oh,
not
thank
just
you
the
so
interview.
much,
Yeah, but
Shirley.
about the film. And so
Yeah.
besides Facebook, this interview will be uploaded to Instagram, on YouTube. And I just really am so grateful. I have amazing friends like you who is willing to share your story because it's not an easy story to share. And thank you for being vulnerable and being so
Oh,
upfront.
anything for you, Shirley.
Oh, see, I
Oh,
have the best friends.
my good friend. Yes, yes. I wish you were closer so we could
I
get together.
know.
But
Right. So now we're going to say goodbye, but it's not the end of the conversation. We will have another one of those conversations with you. We'll have to, because there's so much more to the story that I think just even the story of how you came to your own to be able to get out of the abusive relationship and how you pull yourself together to go back to school as a single mom, how you got out of your depression and found a pivot in your performing career, how you embraced. Really, I remember how you embraced your age. So therefore, you found a niche within the acting career. All that stuff, I think we need to have more conversations. What do you think? Maybe another time?
sure. I'm
Yeah.
happy to talk anytime.
So for now, we'll say adieu, we'll say goodbye, and we'll do it again.
Okay, bye, Shirley.
Bye.